Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Mr. K is Wrong, where I look at the Facebook memes of a right wing extremist that I used to know in my high school days, and I debunk his crap, his nonsense that he posts on Facebook. So sometimes I wonder if it's worth doing this podcast because it seems a little strange, right? To be looking at the Facebook posts of somebody. But on this occasion, I have a pretty solid reminder of why I do this because the memes that he shared this time, oh man, they're just terrible, man. So I'm looking at two right-wing memes that he shared created by somebody else. Well, one of them he shared, the other one is actually something that the other person posted, and I looked at that, but I want to comment on that as well because it's really in the same spirit. But one of these memes is obviously AI generated, which doesn't really make it less disgusting. I suppose from a certain perspective, it might even make it more hideous because it kind of acts as de facto disinformation. But the other image attempts to be cute. I guess they both attempt to be cute, but they're really just a disgusting message that they convey. So one is depicting a non-white person with an MS-13 tattoo next to an ICE agent who has an alligator's face and sunglasses, and they're both near a sign that says, "Welcome to Alligator Alcatraz, security you can't outrun." And there's an added text on the image that says, "Enjoy your stay." Like it's supposed to be a cute or fun little bit of sarcasm. So just a twisted meme if there's ever been one. I'm sure you could find something that's darker and more twisted than this, but this one is definitely it's 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 effed up. I'll just put it that way. So the other meme that this person that Mr. K likes is of a baby alligator on its mother's back saying, "Oh boy, going out to eat. Where are we going, Mom?" And the mom responds, "To a brand new Mexican place that just opened," obviously referring to so called Alligator Alcatraz. And both memes are hideous, and it's really just showing you why I comment on these things because this is just some totally dark and disturbing messaging that's overtly fascistic in its nature. So these memes are weaponized propaganda, obviously. They don't just aim for edgy humor, they use dehumanization and fear mongering to push a specific political agenda. So, meme number one with the ice guard with an alligator face and sunglasses. The imagery is of a stereotypically depicted non white person with an MS-13 tattoo, an ICE agent with an alligator's face and sunglasses, and that sign, which again says, "Welcome to Alligator Alcatraz, security you cannot run." And here's what it's trying to say in case you can't figure it out. The meme tries to justify harsh immigration enforcement by linking undocumented immigrants, especially non-white ones, with violent crime, in this case MS-13, and glorifying ICE as a cold-blooded, ruthless force, with the ICE agent being an alligator, keeping Americans safe. Well, interesting the idea that even the ICE agent is, cold-blooded, and that's supposed to keep us safe. Well, keep who safe? You have to wonder. So, in a weird way, not only does this dehumanize the immigrants who are being detained, but the ICE agents themselves. In a way, it's actually feeding the critique of ICE as being not only inhumane but sort of like they're programmed or something. Like they're predators out there to do harm, rather than to serve any sort of justice. But the reality, in case you didn't know, not all undocumented immigrants are violent criminals. In fact, immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native born citizens, according to decades of studies. So, MS-13 is real, but rare. Most immigrants, especially those fleeing violence, are trying to escape gangs and not join them. And let's face it, in some cases, even when people do join gangs, it's precisely because they feel they are forced to do it. So using MS-13 as shorthand for all immigrants is dishonest, and yes, it is a racist thing to do. Dehumanizing ICE into a literal predator implies brutality as a positive trait. It celebrates cruelty over due process and basic human rights. That's not justice, that's authoritarianism in cosplay. And meme number two, I'm going to remind you of the imagery. There's a baby alligator riding its mother's back, excited to eat. The mom says they're going to a brand new Mexican place that just opened, a coded reference to the prison detention facility that is mentioned in meme number one, which again is sometimes called Alligator Alcatraz. So, what is this meme trying to say? Very similar to the first one, only in some ways more cutesy, which actually kind of makes them more disgusting in some ways too, because they're trying to make something that is actually a very violent and fascistic message into something that's cute and just a fun little meme. But the meme continues the dehumanization that you would find in the other one. It implies that immigrants, especially from Mexico, are prey, which is sort of ironic because there's the contradiction there of the messaging that these immigrants are supposed to be predators, and it turns their suffering into a joke about feeding time. And I just want to get into that contradiction there a little bit more because I, often, when they mention these immigrants, they're made to be the worst of the worst, and they're made out to be these terrorists, gang members, lunatics like serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer types, or whatever. But if that was really how the majority of them were, do you really think ICE would actually be the main ones who are victimizing them? Wouldn't it be that there was actually sort of a potential bloodbath against ICE itself? But instead, if you look at the reality, the people being targeted here by ICE are mostly people who are not attempting to defend themselves in any sort of violent way. Most of them are actually pretty passive. In fact, if there was more violence, these right wing propaganda agents of disinformation or misinformation, or just propagandists, whatever you want to call them, they would be absolutely spreading that message that these people are so violent against ICE and all that sort of stuff. It would be at the forefront, it would be used to fuel the pro ICE messaging. But instead, they struggle to exaggerate the threat that these immigrants pose in the media, even. So they uh, they can't latch on to too many real life examples of these people actually being violent toward ICE or to other people for that matter. And that's because the vast majority of them are, again, nonviolent criminals. So the reality is that this is full blown xenophobia disguised as humor, treating human beings like food for a predator. It's fascistic logic, and the phrase Mexican place is a racist euphemism, obviously. It conflates nationality with illegality and makes brown skinned people the punchline. I mean, keep in mind it's not a meme that is designed to be misinterpreted. It's it's a very specific message that is targeting Mexicans in general. Because if it was just targeting MS-13, well, they would specifically be saying that it's targeting gangs. Instead, they say Mexican place. So there's really no getting around that messaging. This is an anti-Mexican meme. So there's nothing funny about kids in cages or families being torn apart, and the meme trivializes a humanitarian crisis that right wing ideology has chosen to create, because if they really wanted to avoid a crisis and have more just outcomes, they wouldn't be celebrating the cruelty in the way that these memes are celebrating it. And, ironically, one of the things that these right wingers often do is they try to act as if they're Christians. The Jesus in the Bible, it didn't say to turn away immigrants. It said to welcome them as if they are your neighbors. And that is not what this meme is doing by any means. So the big picture here is that these aren't just memes, they're propaganda tools. They're using humor, exaggeration, and metaphor to desensitize people to cruelty, reinforce racial stereotypes, and glorify state violence. The alligator isn't just a joke, it's a symbol of power without empathy. So if you're laughing, you're being recruited by this. So keep that in mind. And I know the way that things work. If you're laughing, it's not always necessarily an endorsement. You might be laughing because something is awkward. It might be sort of a nervous tick. But if you're seriously looking at this and laughing, like you find it hilarious, like it's such a knee slapper, well, you are on the side of this fascist agenda, plain and simple. And this meme totally exposes it for what it is. There's no misinterpretation here. This is just celebrating cruelty, mocking what they know is going to be the pain, suffering, and actually the death of certain people that they don't like. Because they're admitting in this meme that people will be dying if ICE has its way. That's their messaging. That's not me saying that as like, oh, I'm a liberal or whatever. That's right here in the meme. They're telling you that they want people to die. They want them to suffer. There's really no misconstruing that messaging here. And that's what makes it so dark. And that's exactly why I'm doing this podcast. It just so happened that somebody that I used to know back in my high school days is posting these things. And it could have really been anybody else, but it happens to be this person that I call Mr. K. And yes, his last name really does start with a K, but I do keep him, largely anonymous. I maybe shouldn't be doing that, but I'm doing it. But anyway, how do you respond to something like this? Well, call out the racism clearly, like I'm doing here. These memes are built on stereotypes, so make that clear. In the sort of language that I'm using here, you can counter it with facts. Immigrants aren't a unique threat. They're a part of the solution, actually, to the world's problems. They are human beings. And like with any group of people, sure, you can find some people in that group who might be bad in some way, and you can treat them the way you would treat bad people in any other group. There's no real need for a special treatment sort of thing here. And that's really something that should be reflected in immigration policy. So if somebody shows up, they're looking for help, they want to become a citizen, I think that process should be fast tracked as sort of a general amnesty program. But at the same time, of course, if there is somebody in that group who is indeed a violent terrorist, somebody who is a proven repeat offender, sort of like Donald Trump himself, well, then you can prevent them from coming into the country. You can hold them legally accountable. You can do all of that stuff. So general amnesty means exactly what the words suggest it means. General. It doesn't mean you let everybody get away with everything who comes in. You can still have some sort of screening process if society decides that, right? And that don't let these people tell you differently. You can have some sort of process that determines if somebody is a threat, and it doesn't have to be unfair or unjust, and it doesn't have to be a cruel process. It doesn't have to be sadistic or sick like these two memes are. So don't let people misrepresent, the issue here. You can let people into the country, and you will probably be safe. And sure, you can find, like I said, you can find some examples of an occasional crime, but you can find those among native born citizens. So the idea that, you can go after Mexicans like this meme tries to do, it's just racism. Like, you could just as well go after white people. You can go after men as sexual predators in general. You know, that they want to pick on groups that they happen to dislike, and they use memes to do it, like these. So you might also want to ask who benefits from a meme like this. That's a part of how you respond to such a thing. Memes like these divide working class people and distract from real issues like wealth inequality and broken systems. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Have a good day.